Well, hello, everybody. My name is Gina Rose, and I am on staff with Inheritance of Hope. And this presentation is about caregiver burnout because it is real. And we want to talk about maybe how to recognize it and what we can do in the midst of it. And I have a whole panel here of people with me who are active caregivers, or they have walked this journey and they understand it well. So we're going to go around the circle here a little bit, my circle, which is different on everybody's Zoom page. So I'll call your name, but if you can just tell me your name, where you're from, and maybe what retreat you were on. And I'm gonna start with Dana.
Yeah, hi, I'm Dana Gilmore. I'm out here in Newport, Rhode Island, and I was on the August 2019 retreat in Orlando.
Great. Mike?
Hi, everyone. I'm Mike Kao. My wife and I and our kids live in Natick, Massachusetts. It's a suburb just west of Boston. And we were served on the January 2020 retreat in Orlando.
A newbie. And Dina?
Hi there, I'm Dina Kozlowski. I'm from Charlotte, North Carolina, and my family was served on the December of 18 New York City trip.
Awesome. Martha?
Hi, I'm Martha Toffland. I'm in Orono, Minnesota, and our family went on the 2018 California retreat.
Awesome. Jamie?
Hi, I'm Jamie Gallion. I live in Broomfield, Colorado, and my family was served in June 2019 in the Asheville retreat.
And Amy?
Hi, I'm Amy Shaw, and my family and I were served, oh, I didn't tell you, I'm in Ohio and on a little farm. And our family was served on the April 2019 Orlando trip.
Awesome. Thank you. Creed?
Yeah, hi, my name's Creed Larson. I'm in a suburb of Salt Lake City, Utah, and me and my family were in the summer of 2018 in the Denver retreat.
And Ellen?
Hi, Ellen Case from Rochester, Minnesota, and my family was served on the same retreat as Creed, and we were in a remote area in Colorado, September of 2018.
Yeah, that was a tiny retreat.
Yes.
It was fun.
It was awesome.
It was
It was awesome. Yeah, it's like everybody had nosebleeds and it was awesome. So I wanted to ask you guys some questions and just kind of discuss together some things that you've experienced. And the first question I had is, like, what was or has been like an unexpected aspect of being a caregiver? Like, this could be heavy or light, but just something that's been unexpected for you. Anybody can go first.
I'll pipe in. I think that one of the biggest challenges initially especially was how much people didn't understand the burden of a caregiver. I found that it was difficult to be able to connect with people because they didn't quite comprehend what this was taking. And to be fair, they didn't have the inside view on it. But that was surprising to me that people weren't sort of putting two and two together to say, whoa, he's probably drowning, right? That was surprising.
Kind of along that line might be the aspect of having younger children and then being a caregiver of someone with a terminal illness. I found that aspect of it pretty lonely, being honest, and my spouse was able to find some support groups locally and whatnot, and I looked around and just wasn't a lot of that. So for the caregiver, especially with younger kids, it's like we're a niche group kind of thing. The other thing I would throw out is just kind of the intensity of it all. I think I'm more of a flatter emotion type person generally, so the intensity of the emotions I had during the caregiving time, whether the wonderful side, there's many wonderful moments of making memories and those things, and then there's the very hard times, what I now know, anticipatory celebratory grief, those types of emotions that I've learned about since my caregiving days and had some time to reflect. Those would be some added pieces, but there's some really wonderful, loving, warm things along with the hard times, but it's all pretty intense in my opinion.
Yeah. From my perspective, I mean, with kids and all that, they're just things that you're just unprepared to handle, right? When you sort of get thrown into the deep end of caregiving, right? And there are just things that, at least I'm just untrained to do, right? Everything from, like cleaning dressings and, emptying drains and things like that to, even, navigating the medical landmines and insurance and all that. I think it's just so much, right? So much is thrown at you at one time, and you just find yourself sort of in the deep end trying to tread as much as you can, right?
I would also kind of add to that I was surprised that there was just so much medical stuff that I needed to learn. I needed to learn how to read clinical trials and navigate and learn the names of drugs and what do they do and what does that mean and that type of drug and just all those kinds of things. In a way, I've kind of enjoyed it because it's kind of a cerebral thing as opposed to all the emotion that you deal with. So there's a little bit of maybe some joy in that, but it's also it's so weighty because you're like playing with your husband's life and you only have one husband and you don't want to, so there's all those emotions too. But I wasn't prepared for the honorable PhD I may be earning.
Great point.
I was going to just jump in. I'm kind of a natural procrastinator, and kind of an upside of when my husband was originally diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and we thought it was going to be a pretty quick course, and it hasn't turned out to be that way. In fact, he's still here 3.5 years after diagnosis and whatnot. It kind of sprung us into action and to take care of some things that I'd been, quite frankly, we put off for a future day, like wills and financial things. And we got all of those affairs in order really quickly right away. And so I didn't have that on my worry pile anymore. And that was very helpful and a little unexpected to go from kind of always putting that off to getting that stuff done right away. And I was really grateful we did that. And then I would just echo kind of the other parts of just at times where, unless you're sort of in it, and everyone on this panel gets it because they've been there, folks that haven't done this, been in these shoes, they can't really appreciate it fully. And so that can feel really isolating. And I think sometimes when I'm tired and starting to feel burnt out, I start to feel a little resentful when I feel like it's been so long. I think people have brought their hot dish and they've kind of crossed it off their to-do list, and we're really tired and, not always great about asking for help. So that part's a little was unexpected. And then on the other side of that, all the joys of the things we have received through all of this time, IoH being one of them.
I have a couple of thoughts too. One of them is actually kind of some self-reflection, but I was actually surprised to find that I could do it. I try really hard to be a little bit more on the optimistic side of things. I know there are times when that is just totally impossible, but I think, once you find out that your loved one has a certain diagnosis and then you grapple with those terms, I just really feel like what fueled me to get through it was every time I realized I could do something, like I got this, like I can carry the family. So that's one thing that kind of I was very unprepared for. I think that was a big surprise. The other thing that I think, and now my husband has since passed, but I was surprised afterward to find how much I not only missed him deeply, but that I found the things that had been so hard and so exhausting, how much I missed it when I didn't have that opportunity anymore. I wished that I could just have one more day. So that was a surprise for me as well.
Yeah, unexpected.
Yeah, I mean, as far as I think there were probably a lot of surprises. I think Amy and I kind of took things as they came. You know, similar to Martha, I was optimistic, you know, to a certain point. But you know, there was one kind of thing that happened that kind of, you know, really comes out. This reminds me of, and you know, it was trying to come to terms with, you know, supporting my wife even when I was 100% in disagreement with her decisions. That took a lot. There was one point in time, you know, like Amy, you know, I think we've probably all here earned some sort of honorary medical degree, but you know, very much dove headfirst into learning about treatments and reading, you know, studies, and just, you know, doing everything I could to, I mean, I guess make sure that, you know, the doctor, you know, who maybe didn't get an A in every class through medical school was doing the right thing. So, you know, I felt like I was, you know, not just her caregiver, but her advocate, you know, through that part of the journey. And, you know, for the most part, certainly in the beginning, when we found ourselves still kind of in this, I don't know, like cloud, trying to figure fog rather, you know, trying to figure out, you know, up from down, left from right. You know, we were pretty lockstep, and, you know, with all the research and everything that I'd been doing, you know, she kind of was like, yeah, you know, that's what I want to do. And then there came a point in time in her treatment that, you know, she just said, no, I'm not going to do this. And it took a lot for me to kind of come to terms. And I wish I could share exactly how I did that. But, you know, when she said that, you know, it got to a certain point where I recognized I'd known my wife long enough that, you know, not only am I treading in dangerous waters, but if I don't start swimming away or in line, you know, I'm going to have a real problem on my hands. So I went away. I started, you know, asking some people that I trusted, you know, how do I do this? You know, I love my wife. I 100% want to support her. I mean, that's my purpose. What, you know, how do I do this? And it just kind of, you know, it turned out that, you know, as a caregiver and her advocate, you know, that's one big piece of it, but it's not my decision, you know, and I can have all sorts of feelings, but I was never in her shoes. And so, you know, there were definitely some tears, hopefully not too many harsh words, but we came through it and I came through it. And that to me was the most surprising thing, you know, not that she disagreed with, you know, something I said. That probably happened a lot, but, you know, that I could find it within myself to figure out how to, you know, support her with that decision, even though I didn't necessarily agree with it.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah, the caregiver journey and the spouse with the illness, they are very different journeys. I learned that as well. You know, they are different. They certainly intersect. There's a lot of togetherness in it, but it is a different perspective.
Yeah. Which kind of ties into the loneliness that you guys have expressed, that even though you're in it with somebody, it still feels kind of isolating and alone. Yeah, that makes sense. Well, let me move on to another question here. I just want to throw out the question, like, some compare the caregiver journey to like being on a crazy roller coaster, or maybe a marathon with lots of hills. Like, who put that there? how would you describe the caregiver journey? Like, what kind of metaphors would you use?
I can chime in, Gina. I always say everything about this journey sort of comes in waves, right? And at times they're just, rough and unrelenting. Sometimes you sort of find yourself in way over your head, right? And you just sort of brace yourself for it. But, there are calm times, but I think the waves are always there, right? I feel, and, when you're sort of dealing with terminal diseases like these, that, you're always just sort of on edge about sort of what's coming over the horizon, right? And, it could be calm one day, but, you could wake up the next day and it's rough again, and there's sort of nothing you can do about it except maybe just gird yourself a bit.
Yeah, waves. That's good.
I actually used a similar metaphor with when my sister and I would talk about it, that I felt like I was just constantly treading water, and it might be calm, but I was still treading water, and I was not able to touch the bottom, and that was her way of helping me, was that she would text me and say, just keep swimming, like, because that's all you can do. But yeah, it just feels like some days are really rough and some days are calm, but regardless, you're swimming constantly and ready for the next bout of waves.
Not really ever resting. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Anyone else?
Yeah, I would say, is marathon roller coaster an option? I feel like it's both of those, and in that sort of wave sense, sometimes it's a marathon, sometimes it's a roller coaster, but definitely I can echo that feeling of like the ever-present nature of it. Just feeling like it never sort of gets a break, and finding ways to do that is certainly a challenge, and doable, but definitely a challenge. Yeah, marathon roller coaster, it's both. It just depends on where you're at, what's happening, who's involved, who's not involved. It's a lot. And I think maybe that's it, right? Be ready for that. Sometimes it will be as boring as possible and slow, and like mind-numbing slowness combined with the hopefully not too often, but often very regular, sort of moments of terror and exhilaration. And because it's so good sometimes, it's so rich sometimes, it's so connected, it's so beautifully and deeply real, authentic, and love filled, right? And let alone the aspect of heaven's engagement. But then there's these other moments of just deep loneliness and anxieties and fears and frustrations and sorrows and griefs and all the rest. It is a dynamic experience, both in speed as well as in level.
Mm-hmm. Well said. Yeah.
I would echo what Creed says. We've used the roller coaster analogy a lot, Bryan and I have, and he's on every 2 to 3 month scans for the rest of his life. And so we kind of get that build up right before that next scan. We've heard the term scanxiety, and it's very real. It's probably more real, interestingly, for me than for him. His kind of comes after the scan. So thankfully we figured out a way to not have it at the same time. So we've kind of equated it as a really, really long roller coaster ride, which at times we've had a lot of fun these last 3 years. It hasn't been all just terror, nail biting, awful. We've squeezed in some really great memories, but the every 3 months for the last 3.5 years is a really, really long roller coaster ride. So we've used that analogy. Although I really like the wave analogy. That's really cool, and treading water, because there are days that's kind of feels like what I'm doing too.
All of those speak to me, and I had one that I've remembered because I've never heard it my whole life. A pastor at our church in a Sunday school thing during our journey used a snow globe story, and it just struck, and I've used it with my kids. A snow globe, when you think about it, is beautiful. We look at them, the snow sprinkling around, but when you're thinking about being in the middle of it, the blizzard, and how cold and hard and challenging that can be. But when you have perspective, and again, I'm almost 2 years out from my spouse passing, the beauty of it all, like you said, the rich things that are in the midst of it, when you get outside the snow globe and look at life, and if you trust that God has a plan, and the richness of the time you had with the person, the time you did have, and the impact on your life. I just thought the snow globe was a great thing. It's something I've not thought about. So when I see a snow globe now, I think of it in a different way.
That's really great. I'm going to add that I think we're on a roller coaster that you're blindfolded for, and you don't know, when you're riding a roller coaster, you can see where the track is going, and you can kind of almost shift your weight a little bit and be ready for it. But that's at least how our experience has been. We think things are fine. We get a phone call from the oncologist and they found something in the pathology report. Like, what? I mean, that's kind of where we are. So I feel like you don't have any idea what the next day may hold. And so again, and I love that snow globe. And I actually just bought a snow globe. So I'm so happy that you said that. I'm going to look at that differently. But I think it's that continual forcing myself to stop running to the future and stay here now, because right now we're okay. And really that's all that we're ever supposed to be doing. So.
Well, let me move us to the next question. These are great, really helpful responses. So how do you recognize when you're overwhelmed? Like, what signs and symptoms show up in your life that let you know I might be swimming in the deep end right now and not really prepared for that? How do you know when you're overwhelmed?
So for me, I wasn't aware. I mean, I guess there'd be some days, where my head would just be so frantic or hectic, having a hard time kind of focusing on any one specific thing. But what really kind of set me off, or made me realize, hey, I might, need to figure something out, is I'd go to work. Hey, you doing all right? Oh yeah, I'm doing fine. Are you sure? Right? That second, you sure you're doing okay? To me, that was kind of my little tripwire. That was like, yeah, maybe I'm not, I'll keep trying to fake it till I get out of here, but maybe I need to go do something about that.
It's the head tilt with the second. Are you sure?
Yeah.
Are you sure? There's head straight for the first one, and then it's, are you sure?
Yeah, I mean, it's just really easy to get overwhelmed and have it be too late. I felt like, especially in our house, having really young kids, you're just going. And sometimes for me, I found that I have a hard time letting go. So maybe you realize you need some help, but then maybe you're not really ready to let go of that thing that you need help with.
That's a good point.
I recognize it just with when I'm, my personality, I get, less patient, more snippy. My poor kids get the impact of that sometimes. It's when I'm not handling it, when it's becoming overwhelming, it comes out in how I respond to those I'm closest to, probably, being honest.
Well, that's what I was going to say, is I get snippy.
Me too.
I just don't have the tolerance for everyday life. And it just feels like, I don't know, I worked out today and it was over and I just lay there on the mat and, I'm in the thick of this. And I couldn't articulate why I was laying there, but I did not want to go back in and see my people. So yeah, I think, and my husband and I we're really communicators. And so one of the things that he and I have both identified is that I go through cycles where I'm like, I love a challenge and I love to climb a mountain and I can just put I can go all in, but I do that so intensely. And then he'll say, remember, Amy, you're gonna crash. And if I can listen to that warning, if I can start to see those signs in myself. I think I told him yesterday morning, I'm just about to crack. And he's like, I know. You know, if I can catch it there before I do the explosion and before I melt down or say things that are going to hurt people, you know, I think it's just that self-awareness. But it's taken a lot of, and this has been going on my whole marriage, 24 years. You know, I am just a cyclical person, apparently. You know, I do find a challenge and go. And so in a way, cancer has been a new challenge and something to kind of tackle. But I feel like, I don't know, it's, if you can know yourself and see your signs and maybe the little forerunners of you're about to have a meltdown and it's not going to be pretty, that's kind of what I learned about myself.
You know, I think that what was said just there, this partnering, so to speak, with if your partner's in a place where they're able to do this, to together approach it and to say, and to have, and for me, this was a great experience, was my wife, Teresa, you know, at least before she got really close to the end, she was able to see what was happening. She was debilitated, so she couldn't engage, but she could see it. And it would be moments when she would say, hey, Creed, guess what? It's time for you to go to a movie with the guys tonight or this weekend, right? And so remembering that it feels so lonely, but it doesn't, but it doesn't have to be lonely all the time. And your partner can help you identify and see some of those things. And then, you know, and in addition to that, you know, as it did get into a place where she wasn't in a place to do that anymore, I did see, you know, if I sat down and before I knew it, I'd spent 3 hours in the middle of the night watching, you know, some dumb TV show, like that was like, oh, wait, we're in a place that, you know, if I'm numbing out in that way or any other, that was also a good indicator that said time to make sure we focus on being whole, being still me, and sort of recharging enough to be able to continue to support the ongoing effort.
That's really good.
I echo all of that. I think my teenage sons let me know when I'm kind of hitting that point too. I try to, I get less tolerant of little things that really don't matter, really. You know, if they've made their bed or not, really at the end of the day, is it a big deal? But it's a big deal in that moment. And I think it's because I'm reaching that end and I want something, you know, I want peace and control in the house and things in order, because we can't always have peace and control with our partner's cancer and how they're responding or whatever their illness is. So I tend to start micromanaging those around me, and my teenage sons let me know it. So that's good. They give me the heads up.
Push back a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because what I hear is like self-awareness, definitely a big important part. And then also like really being attuned, like letting other people in that can give you some feedback. That the people around you will say, yep, you're stressed. Even if you can't recognize it, other people can, which that can be really helpful, which means we need community, right? We need, and we need some honest people, and kids will always be honest for sure. It's like, yeah, duh, you're overwhelmed. So what have you found in this time to be meaningful or life-giving? What has been something that's, you know, you can treasure through this time?
I'll jump in real quick, mostly because I'm running out of battery and I better go find my cord in a second here. But I think, you know, the journey, you know, I'm a year out now since my wife passed, but the journey, the meaningful nature of the journey was and continues to be so rich. I think one of the most meaningful parts of that was the way that she and I were able to together grow and enjoy the time, even in the hardest times. I remember a moment when it was really bad, but we were so connected and we were so, you know, paired and well sort of well yoked, I guess you could say. And I turned to her and I said, "Are you happy?" And she turned to me and she said, "I am happy." I said, "Have you ever been happier?" And she said, "No, I've never been happier." I think that the life-giving sort of experience of those moments it's so powerful. The closeness of heaven and the goodness of that source was, frankly, incredibly surprising. And in some ways I miss some of that, but and the goodness of other people, it's so meaningful to see and allow for those relationships and those connections to happen. It's easy to see the burden of the journey, but it is such a rich, beautiful, developmental, like Amy said, like I want to be a person who grows and moves forward, but at the same time, like this is hard work, but it can be so worthwhile. And again, having come through it to this point where I'm at, so beautiful, so blessed, and so connected with God and with others. The experience was terrible, but I wouldn't trade it. It was life-giving and beautiful in so many of those ups, I guess you could say, as well as the downs.
That's so encouraging to hear. It's just such a, I mean, we are in the middle of this, and we have seen God show up so faithfully, and I wouldn't trade this either. And we've had other loss in our lives. I've buried a child. We have buried a child, and I've come to a point where I wouldn't say that that I would want him back for all the things that I've learned and the closeness that I've had with our family as well as the Lord. So I love to hear that from other people too. The question, Gina, was, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, what have you found to be meaningful or life-giving during this time?
So for me, I have just painted, and that has been extremely life-giving for me. We have 10 children at home still, and they have really self-volunteered to clean up after dinner. And so I have been able to go up to my studio and just paint, and just allowing my emotions to flow out, like physically flow out via paint and canvas, and not caring what I create, not caring at all what it looks like, has been so great. And to be able to be in a routine of doing that. Now, I haven't done it since early August for a variety of reasons, but for me, just getting the creative side of me continually outletted. So I've found some other ways of doing that, because I'm in doctors and hospitals all the time. I'm sure everybody is, but for me, I just take a clipboard and a piece of paper and a Bic pen, and I've been drawing, and that's been a real surprise to me. I really didn't know that I could do that, but sometimes, and then that feels like I'm also like doing something for myself. Like this is only me, and it's a expression of something down in there, especially some of those ugly colors I put on canvases. But that's been a real gift to me, and I would encourage people. I believe that everybody's creative, and I know there are a lot of people that like, oh, I don't do that well, but I think that you should try doing something creative, something that is so different from everything else that you're pouring yourself into. That's been a good escape for me, and also exercise. But,
yeah, I'll agree with the exercise piece, and some of what you're saying is a little bit of alone time. And it's so rare. There's none of that in this journey. But for me, 3 to 5 times a week, I've got to get outside and walk or slow jog 2 or 3 miles. And it's like, if I can just keep doing my 5Ks, the mental side of having some quiet time. And I listen to Christian music as I'm doing it. And I'm not a creative creator person, but I love music to get my emotions. The number of tears I have shed on those walks. And that was life-giving, though, for me, and just prayerful time and those kinds of things as you walk this journey, just to process. So however you find some alone time, I didn't even realize that's what it was until I kind of, again, getting some perspective now that I'm past that intense piece of the journey, looking back, I'm like, wow, again, God provides what we need. And then just my church family, I just have to call that out for those of us that have church communities. Being in church every Sunday and the support, but also again that time to just reflect and hear from the Lord and again keep that perspective, that snow globe, the outside perspective while you're walking through the hardest days. That's what was life-giving to me. I would not miss those church and Sunday school group gatherings, because that was my only adult time during the week.
Yeah, real quick, I'm with you, Dina. I mean, find your place. That was a big thing for me, was to find a place where I could go and yes, like Annie said, be alone, find a place where I could recenter. You know, I actually began to learn about a form of meditative prayer called centering prayer, which became the place when even I couldn't be in another place. But yeah, and for me, it was a relatively low, but nevertheless a little mountaintop close to work, and that was my refuge. I could go there, and if I needed to yell, I yelled. If I needed to praise, I praised. If I needed to cry and, you know, and mourn, I did. And if I needed to rejoice, I did too. Yeah, find your place. And I think the sooner the better. I wish I'd have done it sooner.
You know, looking back now, one of the things that I found meaningful at the time was not so much for me, I guess, but for the kids. You know, Amy used to spend a lot of time, you know, upstairs in bed, and yeah, she'd watch all sorts of nonsense on TV. And you know, it was kind of, I started having, you know, at first it was my daughter, my youngest, go up there and just spend time, let her sneak candy up there and just hang out with mom before bed, and, you know, for an hour maybe, and they'd hang out, and, you know, did that, you know, for my boys as well, even though they weren't necessarily as into, you know, what was on the television as they were, you know, hanging out and, you know, cuddling with mom. Yeah, and looking back, like that was really meaningful, not just to them, obviously, you know, but to me, knowing that I was doing something that was good for them.
I think for me, one of the things that was really eye-opening was just sort of, you know, generally seeing the good in people, right? And, you know, people who you wouldn't even expect to sort of come to your side, you know, mere acquaintances, right? Who kind of really prove that people can sort of sacrifice self for others and really expect nothing in return. Right. And, you know, IoH comes to mind too when I sort of think about that. But it's just it's amazing to sort of see the good in people, and it gives you sort of, you know, hope for our future and hope for the kids and all that. So it's been life-giving, right? It's just amazing to see, you know, that people, you know, can, you know, selflessly sort of step up and help in a time of need.
Jamie, I think you were about to say something too.
Yeah, for me, you know, our journey was really fast and really intense. So for me, the life-giving moments were when I could take off that caregiver hat and put the wife hat back on. And, you know, we went to a couple movies and, you know, tried to make it as much like a date as possible. Or even when my husband was getting chemo or treatments and had the energy to play a card game or just laugh at stupid videos on my phone or whatever it was, whenever those moments came that I was his wife and not his nurse, gave me energy to be his nurse again 5 minutes later, you know.
We got to do a clinical trial in New York City where we actually met long years ago, and he joked that I was enjoying the date time in New York City. You know, he's like, this is a cancer journey, not date time. But you gotta find that spouse time in the midst and cherish those memories. Yeah.
One of the things that's been kind of meaningful for, I think, both Bryan and I is I'm a writer. I like writing. And so we got a book about, it's called, I think something like Share Your Memories with Me, Dad. And so it talks a lot about, I asked Bryan when he's feeling good questions. Some of them are like around his childhood memories and different things like that. And it's been so cool. And, you know, I've known Bryan since 1987, and I'm learning new things about my husband. And I'm so excited that our kids will have this gift from their dad about, you know, when he was a boy growing up and his favorite memory at Christmas and family traditions and different things like that. So that's been a really cool connection outlet for us and something to know that I think will be a really cool gift to give our boys down the road.
That kind of reminds me that one of the probably the most meaningful things that Ryan and I did, and we didn't do it early enough, but you know, Inheritance of Hope planted the seed for legacy building. And so we always had it in our minds. So I'm also a writer, and I also really enjoy interviewing. And so I just recently rediscovered some interviews that I did with Ryan about a year ago now. So my husband had ALS, which eventually you lose your voice. And so when I say that we started the interviews a little bit too late, the good news is we did them. And so I just played one for the first time for my kids. And, you know, it was anywhere from like, what was it like growing up on a farm, to talk to me about your college days. And so we did these series of, we might have sat in a room with a recorder, and I probably interviewed him for 15 minutes at a time. But now, instead of having nothing, not only do we have his voice, because he did eventually lose his voice and have to use a communication device. We not only have his voice, but we have his personality, and we have the stories that I might forget, right? The details of, but now I have something that I can not only share with my kids, but I don't remember how much we told his family about as well. And he's really close to his siblings. And so knowing that I have that gift to share with his family as well is really, really awesome.
Yeah, I love that legacy stuff is what you find meaningful in the process of caregiving, because obviously Inheritance of Hope, that is a major theme of ours, is creating legacy and how to do that and what that's about. And it does bring a lot of meaning and life-giving moments, for sure, to be putting your life together in a way to share it with someone. So I love hearing all that. I want to move to another question, because I know we're going to start running out of time, and I want to hit an important one here, because this talk is about, you know, this whole workshop is really about recognizing burnout. I want us to talk about that for a second. When you are on the edge of burnout, or maybe we've even crossed over into the flames, how do you recover from that? Like, what helps you get back on your feet when you have just, you know, you're snippy or whatever that we talked about before, or you've just like, you're just having a moment where this is too much. Like, how do you get back? What helps you get back?
I think one of the most important things for me, you know, beyond, you know, somebody pointing out that I'm, you know, starting to reach the end of my rope, is to just get out and do something, right? Find something that's mine. You know, my identity is wrapped up in that. Something I enjoy doing. You know, for me, it's running. You know, so just go and take a half hour, an hour, whatever, and just go for a run. You know, yeah, maybe it takes a little bit of time away that could be spent doing other stuff, but if I don't give that time to myself, then what time I give to my wife or my kids or, you know, anyone else, it's not going to be worth nearly as much. So
I echo what Dana is saying, and then I also would say, when I reach burnout, those are the times when I have to be more religious about getting good sleep. I mean, I'm a notorious night owl. Though I stay up later and later and later and later. And we all know that the caregiving journey, with the ups and downs, you get a lot of sleepless nights. And when you get off track, I mean, it's a slippery slope. So I'm not great about my sleep routine even now, but I think those are the times when I remember to be more religious about some of those just basic habits.
I think
I agree with all these things, and I'd jump in and say that the list, the lists are long, and I'm notorious. I want to get my list done and never have time. But it's put the list aside and just go laugh with your family. Go do something fun, whatever that is for your family. That's how I come back. And I'm not, again, I'm talking to myself because I'm not the best at making that happen, but it brings some joy back in your life when you get buried in everything.
I was going to say that in the middle of COVID, we I don't know how other families are doing it, but I am pretty concerned about my husband getting COVID. So we have been pretty much shut in since March. I mean, we go to the store and we do what we have to, and I spend a lot of time in hospitals and doctors, but we don't do anything fun. All of our kids are home and we're all kind of going cross-eyed. And one of the things that I have done, I am a hyper extrovert, although I'm starting to want to be alone. But for me, that fix when I'm actually like, I've talked about doing art and exercise, and I feel like those are like maintenance things to keep me going. But when I really, really cross over, I need to get out with other friends and people that I haven't seen. And that's part of the stress for everyone, I'm sure, with COVID, is that we can't go do those things, those life-giving things. If I was a true introvert, I would maybe not need that, but I desperately need friends and people and laughing. And, those stupid videos on our phones are actually really, really good. But that's what pulls me back from the actual flames when I do cross over there. So.
I would echo what Amy says too. We're pretty scared about COVID, so we're keeping things pretty tight at our house too. And I too am an extrovert, and I like to be around what I call my people. And so we've done some outside things just to have some sense of community, and we've done weekly Zoom calls just so we can feel some sense of connection. And yeah, that's really been helpful for me, is having contact with those that I love and are important in our life, keeping those connections going as best we can.
Yeah, I would jump in. I totally relate to what everyone else has said for sure. The exercise for me, it was rock climbing. The earlier said the creativity, finding a creative outlet where I could really, in some cases, express the frustration, the grief, all that stuff that I was feeling. And then again, for me, it was a big thing was to really just, what does the scripture say? Turn to God and live. And, and that's not, you can't fix everything just by doing that, but it's a huge part of being able, at least for me, to recharge and be able to move forward, because, that sort of repartnering with heaven was just so critical, continues to be, but was just so critical to reaffirm, reassess, and reestablish so that I could move forward.
I'd just like to sort of echo what everybody's saying and sort of add on top of that, you just have to sort of make time for yourself, right? And whether it is exercise or being creative or spending time with friends, I think, you really need to just carve that time out for yourself and have that time to yourself, so you're not always sort of burned out.
Yeah, and not to be ashamed of that. It's easy to feel guilty, I think, sometimes, because the needs, you look at it and say, oh, there's still so much need, right? Even if you could spend 120% of your time doing this, but don't feel guilty for well-balanced time. Of course, you could take it too far, but don't feel guilty for trying to be healthy, finding, you still need to be your own self too. You've got to have that. And if you don't have that, this thing will eat you if you don't kind of make a space for you as a healthy person to maintain healthy, even improve healthy. And then from that be able to draw water to bring to your children and to your spouse.
These are so important. It reminds me of a quote from one of my favorite authors, Madeleine L'Engle. She said, until I have worked through self, I will not be enabled to get out of the way. Kind of an idea of until I make sure that my ducks are in a row, if I take care of myself, then I can get out of the way and be there for other people. But if I totally neglect me, I'm actually not able to get out of the way to help other people. I need to make sure that I'm filling some stuff up for me too. Really powerful things for sure. All right, I have one kind of final question here. If you could pass along some practical advice or practical information to others on the caregiver journey, what would you say?
I'll start. I would say let people in. Now, I say that acknowledging that I'm not an overly private person, but my husband and I had a really hard time being the people that needed help and not being the people that supported others. And so it became, I think, really easy for us to be comfortable asking our families for help, but there's a whole community out there that wants to be in on the journey to help you weather the storm. And I think there are ways, I guess I would say, I think there are ways for those that, you know, don't want to let the world in to still find ways to accept help. You know, if you're not comfortable necessarily, especially in COVID. I mean, I have to acknowledge that my journey was before COVID and things are so different right now, but there are ways to let people help outside your home. Someone can pick up a prescription for you. If there are people at church that want to help you with yard cleanup, let them do it, you know? And really, like, when I think about some of us acknowledging that we're extroverts too, I mean, it's amazing what the smallest of interactions can do sometimes for us extroverts. Just being able to thank someone for dropping off a meal, exchanging a smile, waving out the door, or like being able to spend 10 minutes, you know, in your driveway with people that have just done some chore for you. Sometimes I feel like that can be just enough to keep us from feeling isolated. So really, it's just like finding ways to let people in because you're going to need a village.
One thing I heard that helped me accept that help was that you're giving a gift to those people that are helping you as well, because they want to help and they don't know how. And if you can accept what they offer or even reach out and say, listen, it's been a hard week and I've been at the hospital all week. It would be awesome if you could just bring mac and cheese for my children. Like, you're giving a gift to them as much as they are giving you a gift as well, you know?
And that, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead. I was going to move on to something else.
Well, I was just going to say, and that circles back to what Gina said, which is, you know, like, you're going to be a better caregiver if you allow other people to take little pieces of the burden off of you once in a while.
Yeah. And the other practical advice I have is that if your spouse is being well cared for, whether that is while they're getting chemo treatments or if they're in the hospital, or all of our experiences were that the nurses were amazing and took amazing care of Eric. And I took those opportunities as my ability to walk down the hall and get a coffee and know that he was incredibly well cared for and would be okay for 15 minutes until I came back, and just took that moment, you know, and it was just in my budget that if we were going to the hospital, I could go down the hall and get a coffee, and that was okay, you know.
Love that you guys brought up the accepting help thing, because as I reflect, I think that's one of the biggest lessons maybe God taught me in this, is learning to be the recipient of help when you're used to always being the giver. So I appreciate all those comments and echo those. The other thing that a big principle in my life is when things do seem so hard and challenging, it's kind of just break it into pieces. just take one day at a time, sometimes it's 1 hour at a time, and try not to get overwhelmed by the big picture of the 50 things or whatever. And, you know, with prayer and all that, get through whatever that really hard thing is that day. And then you can go back to thinking about the bigger side, but I just chopping things into small bits sometimes, back to how do you deal with being overwhelmed. And then just cherish the moments in the midst. Just try not to let those moments go by. The things we've talked about, the stories, the love, the memories, just cherishing every moment with that family member and with kids. And it's just cherishing it too in the midst. It's a precious journey too.
Yeah, I will jump in on that for sure. Like this idea of cherishing it. I would say, you know, don't miss this. This is life provides experiences for all of us, and there are many that go through this journey, but at the same time, not that many people get this kind of an experience where so many people will help you, and so many relationships will be deepened, and so many, you know, because of the way that this is a big thing for community, and the way that it brings so much into this, the opportunity for you to become and to really just grow and to find a deepness of life that you I don't think you could otherwise find. It's an enormous opportunity. Don't miss it. You know, don't miss the chance to grow in deep, vulnerable ways with your children. They are going to go through incredibly hard things, and you know, to be open with them and let them see you go through them with them. The connections that I've formed with my children, let alone with my wife, they're so deep, so beautiful, so good, so rich, and so rewarding. You know, now we're this unit that just says we can do hard things, and we can, and the compassion that I see in them for others, and just, you know, don't miss the opportunity to become and to grow and to be so much formed and shaped by the experience. You know, don't miss the hard. Because the day will come when even the hard, you're going to miss it. I know, you know, here I am, like I say, a year out, and there's aspects of the hard that I go, oh man, I'm so glad I'm not doing that anymore. But there are other parts of it that say, oh, that was so connecting.
Yeah, I was going to jump in and say, let's not forget our kids in this, the lessons our children are learning. Even in the hard times when mom says, I'm sorry. I mean, just the rich lessons. I grew up with a sick parent, so I know a little bit what it's like to be the child. And the conversations I'm now having almost 2 years later, as we're now digesting and talking through really rich stuff from some crazy 11-year-old twin boys. You know, it's really cool. So there are things to cherish.
I was going to jump in here. It never even occurred to me to share this, but I actually started a bullet journal just last month. And one of the things that this has done for me is help me like organize my thoughts. And so like, I just have a check-in page that I made up. And so like physically, like, how am I doing physically? I made a space for head space, like what is tumbling around in my head. And it's been interesting to be able to have that for October and then compare it back with September. And then I have a spiritual section. And then the other thing that I think has helped me go through this, and I would recommend to everyone if you're not doing it, is be intentionally grateful. I mean, this is my list of grateful in September, and September was hard. And, you know, and I'm working on the October one. And just to remember that, that being grateful cultivates and really feeds your ability to see the good in the middle of the bad. And I am convinced of God's love for me. And, you know, we've been through hardship, and we are in hardship, and I am so thankful for it. I mean, suffering is such a gift because it allows you to be shaped and to see some really amazing things and to become a different person. But that's a choice that you have to make. And, you know, I've begged my kids, please don't turn away from God in the middle of this. He's the one who can help you the most. But a literal grateful list. And we've also, as a family, my husband a while ago lifted this great big I don't even know where he got it, rock. And I wrote Ebenezer down the side, and then we all came up with stories of when God came through for us in the past. And we just bulleted those down into a few words. And then I wrote them with Sharpie just all over this rock. And it's just sitting there next to our fireplace. And sometimes I sit down and I look at those, and, you know, those memories come flying back, and you're like, okay, he was faithful then. He's got this now. And I think that's being able to be in the middle of the snow globe and be aware you're in the snow globe. You're going to look back on this and it's going to be good. And I think for me, the way to do that is to keep that gratitude list and find things that, well, it could have been raining too, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I would say amen, Amy. Very well said.
This is all great advice, and the only thing I'd add to this is just, you know, don't be so hard on yourself, right? You're one person, you know, you can only do sort of the best you can do, right? In between kids, if you've got them, and your home and work and all that, it's enough to juggle. Then, you know, sort of adding caregiving on top of that, and you know, it's easy to get overwhelmed, and it's easy to think that you're sort of leaving things undone. But, you know, I think there's always going to be things that are going to be undone. So, you know, just take it easy on yourself, and, you know, and, you know, just, you know, enjoy the moment, right? Enjoy the moments that are there for you to enjoy, and just don't stress out too much about it, or try not to.
I think from a practical standpoint, three things kind of were important to me. You know, one, we talked about, you know, finding time for me, whatever that is. You know, I've spoken to other people since, you know, somebody takes guitar lessons once a week. You know, the other thing, and this was a little more difficult for me during my caregiver journey, was find someone to talk to. You know, unlike, sounds like a lot of us here, I'm not an extrovert, not in any way, shape, or form. So not a big, strong community surrounding me during that journey. You know, I didn't have a church, didn't think I needed a counselor, didn't have a close-knit circle of friends. My family, definitely not an option. You know, there are resources out there though. You know, now I do the Hope at Home group with Inheritance of Hope, which is great. IoH's Legacy Resources Manager, Gina, probably throw out a few more. And then the last thing, kind of to go along with, you know, something Creed mentioned before, and something Michael just talked about, was don't let the guilt crush you, right? That's probably my biggest piece of advice. And I still work through that, you know, pretty much every day, even though my wife passed in February. You know, we're all going to make mistakes. I made plenty of mistakes. But when it all came down to it, my wife was grateful for everything that I did, you know, and my being there the whole time, that was the most important thing. That's all I have.
Yeah, well said. Well, I am so grateful for you guys being willing to share your hearts and your experiences in a way that hopefully can really encourage all these people that are watching us right now. Because there's so many people going through this journey that feel that isolated aloneness that you guys have described. And I think this is part of how we help them know that they're not alone, is that we share what our journey looks like. And we hope that Inheritance of Hope will be a place for you watching, that you really can connect and find a sense of community and connection, and people who genuinely care about you, because we really do care about your journey. So thank you guys for this. So grateful. And we will see you on the flip side.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gina. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.